Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Well, there's some pretty big news today with regard to UFO whistleblower David Grusch and the effort to disclose the truth about the extraterrestrial reality. Grusch recently spoke to a group of about 60 people at a private gathering that was held in New York City. And this gathering was arranged by some unnamed Wall Street bigwig. Grush told the group, among other things, that the United States has recovered a craft that distorts space and time and is capable of producing 1 terawatt of energy. Oh, and 1 terawatt of energy is about a trillion watts. He also said that the number of people who know the full extent of the UFO phenomenon is limited to about 50 people, and that an adversary country is presently considering disclosing the truth about extraterrestrials to get ahead of the United States. Now, we learned about this was some anonymous person on Reddit had posted information about this, what he heard Grush say during this meeting. This person was at this meeting. We don't know who this person is. This person showed up on Reddit, left a message, and then he erased it. But luckily, somebody had saved the message. He actually posted some images too from this meeting, so we have that. And this person was named HV Bears 88, and then the person disappeared. Removed. It was the only post he ever made. This first time Reddit user apparently, and then he disappeared. And somebody else luckily posted it. I learned this on Twitter. A user Roswell Incident had posted this, and then UAP James, another Twitter user, posted this. He says Grush appears to have given a private presentation to 60 people organized by a Wall Street bigwig. Now, let me just stop there for a second. The fact that you have somebody from Wall Street that's very interested in hearing what Grush has to say and inviting him to a private gathering in New York to talk to 60 people. That we'll get into who these people are in a minute. I think that's pretty interesting. That shows that people in positions of power, people who have lots of money, Wall Street, is interested. They're showing interest in the things that Grush has to say about what he has learned about UFOs and the cover-up. Also, it says here, an adversary country is considering UFO disclosure to get ahead of the United States. The non-human intelligence related to UAP look like the typical gray alien. Well, that's not surprising. But one of the most surprising parts of this was that the United States has a UFO craft with a diameter of 40 feet. However, once a person goes inside, it appears to be the size of a football field. The craft is able to produce 1 terawatt of energy. And I never heard the 1 terawatt of energy claim ever before, so this is information that the public was not aware of before, I do not believe. It also says only about 50 people know the full extent of the nature of the UFO phenomenon. Who are those 50 people? Is that the secret control group? Could be. Anyway, I want to go through some of the things here that Grush says and what this person said that Grush said during this private meeting. Again, I think this is, as far as I'm concerned, this is giant news. The fact that you're having people from Wall Street having David Grush come and speak and give them a presentation. And also, he did this for free, just so people know out there. He's not trying to make a buck off this. It says here, this is the person that was at this meeting, this anonymous person. He says, I actually went to a private 60-person presentation with David Grush as the speaker. This was mostly all private citizens, as in professors, lawyers, business people, a few scientists, retired military, current FBI, and other government agency members. So you have some members of the government who apparently don't know anything about this and want to learn more. Obviously, because I guess not everyone is read in on this. In the end, we were allowed to ask questions. And what he said was that he was part of an extremely secret program that had figured out how to track and find UAP in our atmosphere and near Earth's orbit. He said his op-ed will include much more details regarding this. So I'm assuming some of the things he was talking about will be part of these new revelations that he talked about during this private meeting are going to be included in his upcoming op-ed that a lot of us in the UFO community are waiting to read. At some point soon, Grush has promised to publish an op-ed where he tells us more. He has apparently received permission from the government to provide more information about what he has learned behind the scenes. Anyway, it says here, it was hosted by a Wall Street bigwig and his lawyer friend. It was sort of a small saloon-style talk. David also did it for free, even went as far as to fly into New York City just for this. He had arrived only a few hours beforehand and then left first thing the next day. The idea was to get a group of both skeptics and believers from all these different walks of life for a talk regarding David and the things he has said. Most of the people that left had left as believers, or at the very least believed that David was not lying and truly believed everything he said. He also mentioned a few other things that I haven't heard him say before, like that he was told about a UAP that was in our possession that had a diameter of around 40 feet, but once you went inside, it was the size of a football field. They believed that the object was somehow able to manipulate both space and time. He also said that the object was both using and creating energy that was more than a terawatt when measured, which is absolutely ridiculous amount of power, something along the lines of 1,000,000,000,000 watts. Okay, let me just stop there for a second. Now, regarding this spacecraft that was recovered that seems to have the ability to warp space and time. Now, this was something that the attorney Daniel Sheehan, who represents whistleblowers, had talked about last June. There was an article in the Daily Mail. Here's the headline from there. It says, "Crashed UFO recovered by the United States military distorted space and time, leaving one investigator nauseous and disoriented when he went in and discovered it was much larger inside than out," attorney for whistleblowers reveals. It says here, Daniel Sheehan says he was told the mind-boggling tale by a whistleblower who allegedly took part in an illegally undisclosed program retrieving crashed non-human spacecraft and who has now briefed Senate Intelligence Committee staff. The lawyer's story is the latest in a series of stunning claims this week of UFOs in the government's hands, which began on Monday with an on-camera interview of former senior Air Force intelligence officer David Grusch, alleging that the United States government possesses multiple crashed non-human craft. So, of course, let me just stop there for a second. This article, of course, happened last summer. This one was published right when Grusch was, going public with what he learned behind the scenes about the cover-up and about extraterrestrials / non-human intelligence. It says here, the Department of Defense says it has not discovered any verifiable information to support any of the claims. Well, of course, they always say that, don't they? But Sheehan has been helping bring whistleblowers like Grusch to Congress in an attempt to expose what he believes is a government cover-up of encounters with extraterrestrials. And the article goes on to say that the Sheehan told Daily Mail that one alleged recovery recounted to him by a supposed crash retrieval program insider involved a 30-foot saucer partially embedded in the earth with some fantastical properties. They tried to hook a bulldozer to it to pull it out, and it pulled out a shape like a pie slice, almost like it was part of the way it was constructed, Sheehan said. When it came loose a couple feet, they stopped immediately. They didn't want to destroy the integrity of the machine. They had a guy go into it. He got in there, and it was as big as a football stadium. It was freaking him out and started making him feel nauseous. He was so disoriented because it was so gigantic in size. It was the size of a football stadium, while the outside was only about 30 feet in diameter. So I'm not sure if the person who was talking about what Grusch said. Grusch, according to the person who was at that gathering in New York, said it was 40 feet in diameter. Sheehan's saying in this article that it was 30 feet in diameter. Sheehan said that space was not the only warped dimension around the craft. He staggered back out after being in there a couple of minutes, and outside it was 4 hours later, he said. There was all kinds of time distortion and space distortion. Physicists have theorized that propulsion of an advanced craft could theoretically involve warping space-time around it to negate the effects of gravity. But Sheehan declined to give further details, including a location and date of the incident, and said he was unable to provide evidence for the claims. So we don't know if that's the same craft that Sheehan's talking about, that Grusch is talking about. I'm assuming that it is. Grusch, of course, met with was talking with insiders, and that's some of the information he received. So I'm assuming they're talking about the same craft. But we've heard this story before, these kind of stories. People who have been abducted have sometimes talk about this. They see a craft and it looks pretty small from the outside, but they go in, it's like gigantic, like a warehouse. Some of them have claimed. So that's we've heard those kind of stories before. And also, actually, Leonard Stringfield and John Lear, both of them who are now passed on, had talked about a story with regards to this that happened back in 1973. In UFO Crash Retrievals Status Report number 5 from Stringfield, he talks about information he received with regard to a craft that had these kind of specifications. This was information that he had received from John Lear. He was an aviator and the former MUFON director in Nevada. Anyway, it says here, John Lear, MUFON state director for Nevada, undaunted in his pursuit of people anywhere to get UFO facts, has extensively lectured and made several radio and TV appearances in Las Vegas to tell his story. Let me just stop there for a second. Actually, you could actually see one of those interviews, the TV interviews, when he actually was interviewed by George Knapp on KLAS back in 1987. And listening to these radio when Lear talked about this, listening to him was somebody named Mike, the real name withheld on request, who surfaced in September 1988 to tell Lear his first-hand story. And this, of course, again, this is from UFO Crash Retrievals Status Report number 5. Admittedly troubled by his experience, Mike explained that in 1973 he had been an Air Force photographer stationed in Hawaii following duty in Vietnam. His prime duty there was processing gun camera film. One day he said he was notified that his security clearance had been upgraded, and several weeks later he and another photographer in his unit were flown for a temporary duty assignment to Norton Air Force Base in California. Lear's letter to me, November 21st, 1988, recounting briefly his interview with Mike, is paraphrased as follows. On landing at Norton, Mike and companion were taken by Air Force vehicle with windows blacked out on a 2-hour drive. During the drive, Mike was told by the driver, "So you guys are going to photograph the UFO, eh?" The vehicle came to a halt on a platform, which was then lowered into a large underground installation. Escorted to a briefing room, they were told that they were to photograph a flying saucer and the autopsy of 3 dead aliens. Ordered to disrobe, they were issued white smocks and combat boots for security purposes. Mike was then escorted into the installation where he saw a disc-shaped craft about 30 feet in diameter contained in a heavy net suspended from a large crane. Mike was boosted into the opening of the disc. There was no stairs or ramp, according to Lear and Stringfield, and proceeded to crawl inside. He was shocked, he said, to find that the inside looked to be about 10 times the size of the outside. He commented, "I could have thrown a football as hard as I could and not hit the other side." Disoriented, Mike poked his head back outside to check the size, which appeared to be about 30 feet in diameter as before. Once inside, he met 2 persons similarly clothed in white smocks who showed him what they wanted photographed. He shot many photos of control panels and various other fixtures, and later was asked to photograph the exterior from different angles and distances. And then this report goes on to talk about how he took photographs of an autopsy of 3 different extraterrestrials in a different place, in a different room. So, I don't know, I mean, this is hard for me to wrap my head around, but it's amazing, the idea to think that these extraterrestrials are so advanced that they figured out how to squeeze in more space inside of an area that doesn't have that kind of space. It's hard to imagine, but apparently this is what they're capable of doing. It's amazing. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around it, but if that's what we have, wow. Imagine the military implications of something like that. I mean, imagine you could fit 20,000 troops inside of a 30-foot by 10-foot diameter, 30-foot diameter by 12-foot high saucer and then have that saucer go into some enemy territory and land in a battlefield, and all of a sudden you have a whole bunch of 20, 30,000 soldiers running out of an object that would seem impossible to fit them inside. But that's the some of the military implications of technology like this. It's amazing to even think about. How is it possible? I can't even. It's unreal. But this is not the first time. What they're talking about here, what Grusch and also Sheehan are talking about here, is something that apparently we have, and this is something that has been reported in the past, and we have heard stories like this, numerous stories like this, from alien abductees. So this is apparent technology that exists. These extraterrestrials have it, and that's amazing to me. That's amazing to me. So it's something to think about. It's something to I don't know. I don't even know where to begin. But the implications of something like that are staggering. Staggering. It's beyond belief. But anyway, going back to this article, he says here, he also mentioned, Grusch, that he had recently been informed that the United States adversary was considering full disclosure to get out ahead of the United States, and that he passed this information along to the United States government. So apparently, let's stop there again. Grusch has heard from somewhere, from someplace, that maybe another country. Who? Which one? China? Russia? I'm imagining it would be one of those two countries. They're our biggest rivals, right, out there. So I'm imagining that they're thinking about disclosing the truth about the extraterrestrial / non-human intelligence presence before the United States does it. And if that happens, whoever does it, let's put it this way. This should be, actually, it shouldn't be just one country. It should be all of them all at once when you really think about it. It's going to make all the rival country, if the United States comes out with it, it's going to make everybody else look bad. And you can understand why they're thinking about doing it. So maybe the United States should just, end this, because they're going to look terrible. Should Russia make an announcement before the United States makes that announcement. Anyway, moving on with this, he also said that he also alluded to the retaliation that was taken against him. It sounded pretty terrifying, and he wasn't the only one to be retaliated against. Multiple people involved in not only his investigation, but also his fellow peers in the UAP task force, such as Jay Stratton, were also threatened. He wouldn't go too much into it since it's an open investigation, but these people pretty much showed him that they could touch him or his family anytime that they wanted. Now, let me just stop there for a second. That's not surprising at all, of course. That's nothing new. We've heard, that's one of the reasons he filed a complaint about this, and that he was receiving threats. And so we already knew about that part. But some of these other things we didn't know about. Like this one, he says, he also mentioned that the United States has taken part in a fair amount of crash retrievals before 1933. So now when he talked last year, initially he talked about something that came down, a UFO that was recovered in Italy. It was kept by the Vatican. The Vatican, back in 1944, 1945, toward the end of World War II, United States authorities had received this from the Vatican, this object, and they took it back. But now he's saying that there was other crashes before 1933. So maybe this cover-up has been going on a lot longer than we originally thought. I always, in my head, for some reason, I think a lot of UFO people who are interested in this subject, a lot of us believe that it started in 1947, and we might have to change that ideology. Maybe it did start earlier. If the 1933 case is true, if that is authentic, and now there are other ones that happened even before that, wow. And they've been lying to us for that long. I have trouble believing this, though. I have trouble with that doesn't make me right, though. I wonder, if you, at that time, say they recovered things in the 20s or the early 30s or whenever, and they might not have ever put two and two together and come to the conclusion that these things are extraterrestrials, that they're coming from someplace else. They may have come to a conclusion that this must be some kind of a trick. I would imagine that people of that time just probably couldn't ever accept it. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe the reality of the situation is, they recovered these objects, but they never really came up with an opinion on it. Maybe they thought it was some sort of a trick. And maybe it wasn't until the late 1940s, after the big UFO wave began and the Roswell crash occurred, that scientists finally realized we're dealing with something that's non-human, that's among us, and potentially extraterrestrial. And that's maybe when the realization occurred. But I mean, the story gets more complicated with the more stuff that Grusch is saying here. I mean, way more complicated. Anyway, continuing here, it says also that we wouldn't be surprised about what the NHI looked like, such as they look like the typical gray, and they aren't sure where these beings have come from. Well, that's not surprising. Yeah, I mean, it seems like I have read reports, including in UFO crash retrievals by Leonard Stringfield, where they recovered Nordic kind looking creatures. But maybe what Grusch has learned, he's saying that they all look like the Greys. And continuing here, it says there is also a chance that they are extra dimensional, but that could also just seem this way because of the technology they use rather than them being actual extra dimensional beings. That's interesting. That will mean if it turns out that these things are extra dimensional, that means I'm going to have to change my show's title from Extraterrestrial Reality to Extra Dimensional Beings Reality. Interestingly, he has also mentioned how many people know the full scope of the phenomenon to be no more than 50 people, but it wasn't clear whether this meant 50 people currently alive or 50 people ever in history. Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that's no more than 50 people currently alive. I can't imagine that only 50 people in the history of this cover-up were ever totally briefed on the full extent of this UFO phenomenon. I'm imagining that 50 people he's talking about is probably makes up the secret UFO control group. That's my guess. Doesn't make me right, but that's what it might seem like. For all, I mean, hey, Majestic 12, it could have started off like that. I believe that there was a Majestic 12 group, and over the time that expanded. Now we're up to 50 people. Now it's probably Majestic 50 for all we know. Maybe it's not just United States either. Maybe there's representatives from some of the friendly nations that the United States maybe NATO countries, and who knows. They probably have their all representatives, and they all know about this, but they don't know the full extent of it. Only these 50 people. That's what I'm thinking. That's probably the complete secret control group. 50 people. Anyway, this continues. It says, all in all, it was an extremely interesting and pretty hopeful for the future of disclosure. This was after the UAP amendment was shut down, and that he believes we will know much more in the near future. I think we're going to know much more too. Let me just stop there. Yes, I do believe we're going to know much more in the near future. I'm starting to feel pretty good about the way things are going right now. I was upset. A lot of us in the UFO community, we were upset when that UAP Disclosure Act got gutted by those puppets for the secret control group. I mean, just stating truth here. I know there'll be some people out there that will, but that's what happened. But you know what? It doesn't matter. We're still going to trudge forward. We're going to keep pushing forward. You have people like Grusch. We got other whistleblowers stepping up to the plate. I've been hearing some things through the grapevine that I can't really talk about. But we're going to see. We're going to see what happens as time goes on. I can't wait. I want more information. I can't wait to read Grusch's op-ed. Hopefully, maybe there'll even be more stuff in there, more fantastic stuff we're going to see. Continuing here, it says, and apparently it was the only private non-government talk that he has done so far. As for how I feel about everything after hearing him speak, he is extremely smart. I mean, he has an almost unbelievable memory and knowledge about intel laws and other things that have to do with UAP. My opinion is that he is the real deal. Almost everyone left that night with fully believing that he was what he was saying, or at the very least that he believed what he was saying as the truth. So either way you cut it, I believe he is telling the truth as he knows it. Yes, very interesting. Of course, I'll leave the links for all of this so you can check this out for yourself. But I think we are most certainly on the right track. Most certainly. This is fantastic news. This is huge news. We're getting more stuff from David Grusch, and we're learning about these spacecraft that they recovered that can warp space and time. That's wow. Imagine. It reminds me of there was a movie back in the 60s, 1966. Yes, Fantastic Voyage, and in that movie, the scientists had created the power to miniaturize people, and they're going to apply it to for military reasons. You could fit thousands of soldiers, miniaturize thousands of soldiers, basically put them in a bottle cap, and then transport them to a battlefield somewhere, and next thing you know, they're all grown back into normal size, and the enemy didn't even see it coming. They didn't even know where they came from. That's not what the movie was about. That was mentioned in the movie. That was the purpose behind this miniaturization. But that's what it reminds me of in a way. Except this situation here, I mean, you could say, for instance, a saucer. If you have a saucer that's only 30 feet in diameter and maybe 10, 12 feet high, you could fit all these people. And if it's the size of a football field in size, you could fit thousands of people in there potentially, and then transport that to a enemy territory, land it, open the doors, and good night. So it's amazing technology. Now, I don't think that's how we should be using this technology, but unfortunately, that's probably one of the reasons for the cover-up. This is one of the things they're trying to reverse engineer to figure this out. I mean, most certainly, if you have a craft that can do that, you're going to want to try to duplicate it, and you're going to want to keep it secret. And that's one of the reasons for this cover-up. Like I always said, it has to be most certainly the top reason behind all of this. Isn't the panic. It's none of that nonsense. It's the reverse engineering. It's the military capabilities of these craft. That's what it's all about. And most certainly, it's not just the way these things can fly and stop on a dime, travel at 10,000 miles per hour. But if you could make something that is that small but could fit thousands of people inside of it, wow, look out. You could take over the world like that. You really could. Anyway, I want to say thank you all for joining me. Until next time.